In chapter 7, we're going to be getting into geometry here. So in 7.1, we're going to talk about some vocabulary words. We're just going to start off with lines and planes. So let's talk about all these different vocabulary words, and there's a lot of them. So, start at the top. A point is a dot that has no size or dimension. I mean, we have to draw it as having a little bit of size so you can see it, but you have to understand that it's not something you can measure. Okay, so you draw a dot and you call it point A. You use a capital letter. A capital print letter to name a point. Okay, now a line is, oops, let's undo that, a set of points connected, and it goes on forever. Okay, so let's say I had 2 points, A and B. My line would go through them and put arrows on the end. You have to use arrows. I don't know why I don't need that. Arrows on both ends. Okay, so you use 2 letters. With a double-sided arrow over it. So I would call this, I would say AB, and I'd draw the little double-sided arrow over it. That's how I'd name it. Array is a point and all points on one side. Okay, so it's like a one-sided arrow. One-sided arrow. So if I had A and B, and it went this way, I would start with the dot end, then name the arrow end. Because you always want to name it in the way that it's drawn. So this starts at B and then goes to A. So I would say B, A, and I would draw my arrow going from the B to the A, because that's the way it showed up in the picture. A segment is 2 points and all points in between. So there are no arrows on a segment. So if I said A and B, it would just be connecting A to B. So to name it, I would call it A, B, and just put the line over it, no arrows. Okay, a plane is a flat surface, kind of like a sheet of paper, but not a whole box, but it could be the side of a box. Okay, and but the weird thing about a plane is while a sheet of paper ends or a side of a box ends, a plane never ends. It extends forever. We can't really draw that, so we have to draw one that ends, but you have to understand that it'll go on forever. So a plane, we just draw it like a little slanted rectangle, which is called a parallelogram. So you could name it with any, let's put some points on the ends here. I'd call this, and you just need 3 letters, so I could say plane ABC. Okay, I could have said ADC, DCB. You can pick any 3 letters you want, but you only need 3 letters. Intersecting lines are any lines that cross. They don't have to cross in any sort of way. They just have to cross. So it could be a nice perfect X would be 2 intersecting lines. It could be a line up here, a line that crosses all, whoops, ooh, what just happened there? A line that crosses all the way over here. They could cross any which way, but any 2 lines that cross are intersecting. Parallel lines are lines that will never cross. Okay, because remember that lines go on forever. So even if I have 2 lines here, this line and this line that don't cross, if I extend them on forever, they will cross at some point. So just because they don't cross in the original picture doesn't mean that they'll never cross, because lines will go on forever. But parallel lines will never cross. So this line and this line, no matter how long I make those lines, they are never going to cross. All right, I got to pause this now so I can scroll down and fill in the last one. So pause the video if you need to before scrolling down. All right, and the last one, skew lines are lines that never cross and go in go in different directions, I'll say. And this only happens, sorry, that's supposed to say directions. Let's try that again. It's a little bit better. Okay, and this only happens on like a box. You need to have 3 dimensions. Okay, because if I'm drawing on paper, any 2 lines that are on a flat surface, like a plane, they'll at some point cross unless they're parallel. But skew lines, let's say I have a box. Okay, now let's change colors here. All right, if we look at this front line of the box and this back line of the box, these are never going to touch each other, okay? But they don't go in the same direction. They're not parallel. They go in different directions, but they're never going to cross each other. That's skew. That's what that means. Okay, so just opposite parts of a box that don't go in the same direction is skew. Whereas if I had to name intersecting here, this line and this line on the box, while they go in different directions, they will actually meet at that corner. So those are intersecting. Okay, and then if I wanted to name parallel, let's change colors once. Yeah, we'll go with that. If I wanted to say parallel, it would be these guys. Would be parallel. Because they're never going to touch, and they do go in the same direction. Okay, so now you're going to name these figures below. Okay, you're going to name whether it's a segment, ray, or a line. And then we're going to use our letters. So, I don't like that color. Okay, so this one has 2 endpoints and it does not keep going on either side. So this is a segment, and I would call it CG with just that over it. Here in B, I have 2 points, but it extends on both sides. That's a line, and I would say JK with a double arrow on top. And the last one, it has 2 points, but it only extends on one side. That's a ray. And again, you want to name it from the starting point, which is B, to the arrow one, which is an A, and draw a one-sided arrow over the correct letters. So from B to A. Okay, so now you're going to try the quick checks. Model it after these examples here and see which one is which. And don't forget to include these things on top of your letters. Okay, so you want to make sure you put those on your letters and give a name for each one. So pause the video and try those quick checks before moving on. Okay, so now we're going to look at a shape and we're going to name all the parts that are parallel, intersecting, or skew. Kind of like what we did in my little box drawing there. Okay? So, let's do that. Name all the segments that are parallel or perpendicular, parallel, intersecting, or skew. So if I'm looking at UT, parallel to UT. So parallel means same direction. So anybody who goes in the same direction as UT, well, that would be RS. Goes in the same direction. And also WZ. And put your little segment lines over it. Okay, now what about intersecting? I'm going to erase that so I can draw on it again. Okay, new color. Okay, intersecting RU. Remember, intersecting means touch. So there's a bunch of options here. Everybody who touches either of these endpoints at RU. So at R, RS is going to touch it. RW is going to touch it. And at point U, UT touches it. And UW. There's a lot of options for intersecting. It just has to intersect or touch one of these corners. And skew to RS, I'm going to erase again. And change colors one more time. Okay, here's RS. Remember, skew means it goes in a different direction and will never touch. So, going in a different direction and not touching would be WU, it's a hard one to say, and also ZT. Okay, those go in a different direction and are never going to touch. While UT is never going to touch, he goes in the same direction, so I'm not going to include him. He's parallel. Alright, so now you try the next shape, named parallel, intersecting, and skew parts, and we'll check your work in class.